radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
Welcome. How you doing? Fade to Black. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I got here just in time. Today's Wednesday, July 22nd, 2026. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Let's do this, man. Yeah. It's going to be a great show. This week on Fade to Black, Monday night, the one and only Laird Scranton was here talking about advanced alien tech. Last night, Leela Hutchison was back with us. Contact in Chihuahuan Desert. And tonight, it's Timothy Hogan. He's back with us. Always great when Timothy joins us on the show. Tonight, we're going to be talking about my favorite subject and his ancient alchemy, which takes us to tomorrow night. It's our once a month AMA AJA. Ask me anything. My producer, Michelle, is just texting me as I'm, Michelle, chill. Can I do the show? Is it okay? Is it okay with you? She's the boss. See, that's the thing. She's the boss. I'm just the dude on the microphone. I just do what she says. She's literally. Oh, then she just texted me, "You have a cheeky smile." Really? It's cheeky? Is it cheeky? What does cheeky mean? All right. Tonight, Timothy Hogan is here. I'm in a great mood. I talked to a friend earlier today. I don't want to say anything, but she's wonderful and used to work for me at one point. But anyway, she just bought a house today. And the excitement of that, and that really put me in a good mood. There is nothing like that feeling of buying a house. And if you haven't bought a house, then you'll never know. But it's a crazy feeling. Buying a car, you buy 20 of those in your life. You only buy one or two houses, and that's it. And so anyway, and that got me to thinking, why am I in a good mood? I'm in a good mood partly because last night, this is what I'm just gonna put this out there. Last night, after the show, I watched the latest ABBA documentary. Wow. And I got about halfway through and I thought, have I seen this one before? This one came out in 2025. Have I seen it before? A lot of the clips are the same clips from other, and that you've seen over the years. But wow. I mean, we all love ABBA. There's no question about that. Who doesn't? But wow. And it just put, everything in perspective. Just what a great band. Just amazing. And then there was a part 2 or a part 3 to the Great Mood. And that's escaped me. But it was pretty good. The part 3 was the icing on the cake. And I can't remember what that was. Oh man. I will say this. Last night, after the documentary ended and I was getting ready for bed night, so I pulled up a couple of references to Egypt and alchemy and turned those on, a couple of books, and turned out the lights and just really absorb things, to get ready for the show today. Egypt, and ancient alchemy are two of the things that I research the most. Yeah, there's physics and science and space and exoplanets, UFOs, and all the breaking news. And I spend all day, and I'm here on the show before I bring Tim in. I'm here on the show for a couple of hours a night. It used to be 3 hours, and over on Coast it was 4 hours. But after those shows and before those shows, my day in that 24-hour period is spent in research. That's what I do. And Leela mentioned something like, she goes, Jimmy, you know a little bit about a lot of subjects. And it's really true. I research a lot, just like all of you do. All right. So we're going to go through this show tonight. Take some notes. Listen to the conversation. It's going to be great. And I am going to learn something tonight. And if I learn something, so do you. All right. Now, Timothy and I have done a lot of things over the years, done a lot of TV, done a lot of radio too, as well. And so we're going to go like A to Z through alchemy tonight, certainly through the ancient world, but how and what it is doing today. Right. He's an author. Of course, he's an international lecturer. And he's also the Grand Master worldwide of the Knights Templar. And being able to say something like that and ask Timothy questions like we're going to do tonight, think about the source and where this is all coming from. I would like to welcome back. Oh, I do want to mention he's also, of course, one of my partners over on Gaia TV. Yeah, Timothy Hogan. What's up, sir?
Hey, good to see you, Jimmy.
Yeah, man, you're the best. You're the best.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you discussing my favorite subject.
Well, my favorite subject. You can't have it. You think it's yours? Isn't it amazing that we are able to discuss these ancient concepts, ideas, and methodology today after it being hidden for thousands of years, right? Thousands of years. Yeah. It's pretty insane, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. I mean, it was one of those secret sciences. Of course, alchemy gets its name probably from Alchem or Alchemet, which was the ancient name for Egypt, where it was fundamentally being practiced. But, then the Greeks learned from the Egyptians and the Romans learned from the Greeks. And later, there were Islamic societies that were translating old Greek and Egyptian texts on the subject that had gotten lost. And then, of course, the Knights Templar were obsessed with it as well. So it's had quite a history, and then it's also existed within these Gnostic traditions that existed within Europe and the Middle East, and where it was tied in with some of the Gnostic philosophy, which spread as far east as the Ming Dynasty in China, and it was also found in ancient India. So, and many of the same ingredients and everything else were being described. I mean,
I'll tell you. Let me make a comment because I want your response to this. It's one of the most difficult things to research on the net because it's not on the net.
No.
Really, right? It's just not there. But you can, but it's who you talk to and how these traditions are handed down. But there's one important point that is so fascinating to me with this. How many kings in Europe, how many lords in Europe lost their fortunes chasing this? Right?
Yes,
Right?
it's true.
I
It's,
mean,
it's
yeah,
true.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and
nuts.
there were lots of charlatans out there too. I
There
mean,
were, man.
Leonardo da Vinci criticized, the charlatans that were out there. I mean, so it was there. There was plenty of that, and then there were alchemists who got imprisoned by kings and emperors specifically to make stuff for the kings and emperors, and if they
Yeah.
refused, then they
Yeah.
would be killed or have their ears boxed off at the top, or any number of things. So
Yeah. It was going on all over the place.
yeah.
I'll trade you this recipe book for your castle. Right?
Yes, right.
It was that's how it was going down. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, and then there was all kinds of other side inventions that came out of it. I mean, like porcelain, for example, came about, from an alchemist trying to create the philosopher's stone and ended up creating porcelain, or or phosphorus is another example of something that was a side product, and I'm sure once the vessel started glowing, the alchemist was freaked out, I mean, so
Can I ask you a question?
yeah.
Do you think the Voynich manuscript is alchemy?
Yes, I do. There's other things in it. In fact, even when the NSA was studying the manuscript, they suggested that there was star constellations within the manuscript that could only be seen from space. So they were a little baffled that they're even found in this manuscript. But I think most of it had to do with alchemy, for sure. Herbal alchemy, and also a little metallic alchemy, but primarily herbal alchemy.
Could the Voynich manuscript be evidence of the secret alchemy code? That shall never be read by mere mortals, right?
Yeah, well, there were a lot of manuscripts, alchemical manuscripts, specifically from the Middle Ages, that were all written in cipher code, and they had all kinds of different symbols for the different ingredients. I mean, for example, a point within a circle was a symbol for the sun, but it was also a symbol for gold, as an example. But they had all kinds of different symbols for the different ingredients, and it helped ensure that only those who had been initiated and who had taken the oaths not to abuse it were shown the keys on how to do things, and the keys to operations. So, and I suspect that goes all the way back to ancient Egypt. I mean,
yeah, exactly, it does. And the library at Alexandria, and so forth. And if that is the case, and if we look at something, using the Voynich manuscript as an example of this, where it was absolutely the first order of business to keep this stuff secret.
Yeah.
That was it. And so alchemy itself, as it started to get out there, like I'll bring up like Mysteries of the Cathedrals, right? And
sure.
That book.
Falconelli,
yeah, Falconelli.
Yeah.
And you go and you read about Falconelli and read Mysteries of the Cathedrals, which I have and I've read many times, where that was a taste of the secret world that this actually resides in. And I'm not far off the mark, am I?
You're not. And in fact, and to give you like a little bit of controversy or a little bit of theory, some people even believe that Falconelli, whose name just means little Vulcan, that this alchemist Falconelli, who wrote dwellers of the philosophers and secrets of the cathedrals. Some people believe that he was actually Chevalier de Lubitz, who was the very famous Egyptologist, who was the one who was the first to declare that the Sphinx had water damage on it that suggested it was much older than people thought. And then John Anthony West picked up that torch after he read that from Chevalier de Lubitz, and then of course he brought in Robert Schoch to do the testing and where they proved it. And but it all goes back to Chevalier de Lubitz, who many people believe was actually the alchemist Fulcanelli.
Now I've never heard that.
Yeah,
now see, and I'm a big fan of both, and of course
Yeah.
a friend of John Anthony West.
Right.
But I've never heard that connection, and that's what I said at the beginning of the show. I'm here to learn something. That's
Yeah.
interesting. And then the other part about Fulcanelli, with his assistant when they republished the book and added an extra chapter, and that Fulcanelli was still alive and hasn't aged, and he goes back generations, and all because of alchemy.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, do you buy into that part of the story like I do?
I do, yeah. I mean, you can definitely expand your life through alchemy. Some people believe that, if you look at the original king list of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs, they say that there was this 20,000 year period where Egypt was actually run by gods or needers, and it was believed that they had an elixir of immortality that kept them living for thousands of years, prior to the pharaohs taking over, which was kind of interesting. And you find the same thing in the Vedic text. Indra, for example, the god Indra was said to have an elixir of immortality that was guarded by these beings that were guarded. There's the secret ambrosia, the secret elixir, that and of course the epics of Gilgamesh too. Gilgamesh was that story is normally associated with the flood, but another key part to that story was he was looking for this elixir of life. And
is this the part of the interview where I reveal to everybody that you're actually 450 years old?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Do we do that? Should we do that now?
We're doing it for a while now.
But here's the interesting point about that is the Hebsed Festival. And the Hebsed Festival, for those that don't know, and you've got to jump into Egypt and Egyptology to even know what that is. But the Hebsed Festival was a festival where the pharaohs, every 30 years of their reign, had to go and show their physical dominance, right?
Right.
Shooting arrows, fighting lions, racing, doing all of these things.
Because they were still vigorous.
Yes, and that's the official version of it. But when you really look into it, what the Egyptians said was that he was revived,
right,
and rejuvenated, so he could continue. And one would say there's some alchemy involved there. Yeah. Now that's what I think the Hebsed Festival was. I think that
there's some speculation that the myth that's associated with the god Osiris and Isis, in particular, in his whole story, where, for those who don't know, Osiris was sometimes he was painted green, and he represented the vegetation god when he was painted green. And the story of this story is found all over Egypt, but in particular, it's found at the Temple of Seti I in Abydos, which is right next to the Osirian, which was this ancient megalithic structure that we've talked about before, but it has spring water that is filling it up constantly. And there was a belief that potentially the Egyptians were taking the spring water and they were extracting elements out of it, and that the Osiris story was describing this. And in the story, he's tricked by his brother Set, and he's chopped up into pieces. He's thrown into the Nile. Isis turns herself into a bird and goes to look for him. After which she collects the pieces. She reassembles them back together, and she burns oil lamps and incense and does incantations, and she raises them back from the dead. And one theory is that this is actually alluding to, amongst other things, the stages of the alchemical process, where
it's not spiritual,
right?
It's chemical and physical.
That's exactly right. Yeah, because if you do that with certain plants in the region of Egypt, you can extract all kinds of things. I mean, some of them you can extract dimethyltryptamine from, or DMT. Some of them you can extract monoatomic gold from. Some of them you can extract hydrofluoric acid, which is what actually was probably used to eat away at the granite in order to shape the granite and to burn the hieroglyphs into the granite, through this acid that can only, the only thing it doesn't eat through is beeswax, gold, and lead.
And my coffee. It doesn't eat through my coffee.
That's right. Yeah, but if you did
let me jump in here.
Go ahead.
Let me jump in. Speaking of these processes for immortality, and how some of them were done. Now, I've talked to I can't say who, but let's say I've talked to some people that are in that
Sure.
circle.
Sure.
Where I have sat where they have said, okay, there is somebody in this room that is 500 years old. Right? And
right.
Oh, really? Okay. And so I'm running with this crowd, and they tell me about one of the processes. I've talked to you about this, but I'll mention it to the crowd here, the audience.
Yeah.
That this 30-day ceremony where you are locked in a dark room, things happen. I'm not going to go into that, but things go through a process over these 30 days, alchemical processes, where your teeth fall out, your skin falls off, right?
Right.
And
your
then,
nails.
Yep, all of that. And then at the end of 30 days, you are brought out into the sunlight and you open your eyes, and then the process completes itself and you've reversed aged, and your teeth are back, and you've got a fresh coat of armor.
Right.
And these things, I'm not getting into the details of any of this, but these are some of the things that are in that secret world and those secret processes. Do you believe that these kinds of ceremonies actually happen?
I do, because only because there's mystery school traditions that continue to pass on these things today in the form of ritual. Maybe not to the full extent of what they did in ancient Egypt, but it's alluded to in many places. An example is even in the New Testament with the story of the raising of Lazarus. One theory is that this was actually an initiation ritual, and the reason why it's described as such is because Lazarus in Hebrew is El Asur, And El in Hebrew means God, and Asur was the ancient Egyptian name for the god Osiris. And he was raised in Bethany, or in Hebrew, Bethanu. Well, Bet in Hebrew means house, and Anu was the ancient Egyptian abode of the dead. So you have Jesus raising the god Osiris in the house of the dead, which is either a metaphor of him resurrecting the Egyptian tradition within early Christianity, or it was an initiation rite. And my guess is that it was more of an initiation rite, because it's what the Pharaoh had to go through as well. I mean, anytime you see the Pharaoh depicted in ancient Egypt on the temple walls, he's usually depicted with this strange triangular apron. And that is because they're trying to make his body look like the shape of the star constellation of Orion, which was associated with the god Osiris. So it was associating the Pharaoh with the god Osiris.
Yeah, it's
there's Orion.
There are three. I'm talking to the Grand Master here, but just to make this point.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm so intimidated by you, Timothy.
No,
Stop. Is this? There are many depictions of pharaohs that are repeated, but there are three main flavors.
Yeah.
You have the smiting, right?
Right.
For 3,000 years, cracking heads.
Right.
Somebody, that's on every temple, every pharaoh, right? So you have that. The Hebsed festival, the rejuvenation of the pharaoh. Hebsed festival, every pharaoh was proud of that. And this goes back to Dozier's pyramid, the step pyramid. He's got his Hebsed courtyard, right there in front where he did all of this stuff. This is all very important. And the other one, the triangle underwear.
That's right.
And it's and I'm not being cavalier. You have to see it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a weird shape. I mean,
it's a weird shape. But those are the three, and this went on for 3,000 years.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. I mean, and the fact that this myth of Osiris was, for the most part, used throughout that entire time. I mean, there were exceptions, like with the pharaoh Akhenaten, with the Aten, but even he was practicing alchemy. And
we can't discuss alchemy without getting into Akhenaten.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Akhenaten was probably he was the first monotheist in history. He was the first one to say, hey, stop worshiping the gods. They're all aspects of one god, which he called the Aten, or the Atenai, which meant my Aten. And that's where later in Hebrew the word Adonai, meaning Lord, comes from. But it was probably his brother, Akhenaten's brother, Tutmosis, who was raised in the court with Akhenaten, who later, when Akhenaten was deposed, Tutmosis was the one who took all the Atenist followers out of Egypt. And many people believe Tutmosis was actually Moses. And that was where the story of Moses comes from. I mean, and what's significant about that is that name Tutmosis literally means drawn forth the wisdom of Thoth, or Tahuti, who was according to the Egyptian tradition, was the inventor of alchemy. And he later became known as Hermes by the Greeks, Mercury by the Romans. He was known as Enki by the Sumerians, but he was deemed to be the creator of the arts and sciences. And in particular, he was the creator of alchemy, the alchemical science, or was believed to have at least inherited it and passed it on to the Egyptians. So
let's get into the origins, because one of the points that I do like to drive home, and you do too, is Egypt had developed, through Mott and these systems that were put into place,
yeah,
because they just had a perfect life, in that there wasn't anything strange going on with the weather. There was nothing strange going on in the sky. Every day the sun came up, the sun went down, the Nile flooded, everybody ate, everything was just perfect, man, day after day after day after day after day.
right.
Year after year after year,
Yeah.
to where hundreds of years passed, and then thousands, where they were able to concentrate on the self, on the mind, on consciousness, and just do creative things. And
they recorded everything.
They had a written language. To say that the written language started in around 3200 BC, that's incorrect.
Right.
That's just the Narmer palette is dated
Right.
at 3200 BC, which
Right.
had hieroglyphs on it. So the language was already established at that point.
Right.
But putting that aside, they were able to develop the mind and consciousness and techniques, as well as math and science and music and government and agriculture. All of that stuff happened because they had one perfect day after another. But when we really look at this, Timothy,
yeah,
the ideas that they practiced had to have been taught.
Yeah.
So where did the alchemical ideas come from that they practiced?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, from my research, again, this is my theory, but other people have said it too. The alchemy was actually a science that had come from the pre-civilization that the Egyptians referred to as Utlant, and that other cultures like the Mayans and the Nahuatl cultures of the Yucatan referred to as Aztlan, and of course what Plato referred to as Atlantis, that it was this pre-civilization where these sciences were understood. They were brought to Egypt. Egypt is, again, as you pointed out, I mean, it kind of, like with most civilizations, you can see where they kind of grow in becoming more advanced and more sophisticated over time. They start out as more primitive hunter-gatherer, and then they kind of start to eventually, do a little bit more, of husbandry, of
mud huts,
animals and stuff.
Yeah,
and then
Right.
they start to build structures, and then eventually that's how most civilizations go. But with Egypt, right from the beginning, the earliest structures are the most sophisticated, and the alphabet's already there from the beginning, and it's like it was inherited. And the Egyptians themselves said it was inherited. They say it was brought to them by the gods, by the Neeters that had come from Utlant, and that they put the start of their civilization really during the age of Leo, or right around the time of the Younger Dryas Cataclysm. And you can find proof of this in places like, if you go to Karnak, for example, where there's the Avenue of the Sphinxes. Most people think of the Sphinxes as just these lion-bodied things with the heads of people, but actually, by the time you get into Karnak, the the avenue of sphinxes turns into ram-headed sphinxes, but they still have lion bodies. And this is what the Egyptians were saying, is they were saying, look, this is our god Amun, who was the ram, but he was depicted as the ram during the age of Aries when they built that place. And they were saying that, look, our foundation was during the age of Leo. That's why they have lion bodies. But we're building right now during the age of Aries, which is why we're worshiping Amun as a ram, And but it's saying, hey, our foundation goes all the way back to the age of Leo, which would have been about 10,500 BC. And
you know what pisses me off?
What?
Can I share something with you? You know what really pisses me off?
Sure.
I love Egypt. You've been there. I've been there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's my main focus of research. And I also love the Egyptian wing at the Met, right?
Yeah,
in
sure.
New York. It's crazy. But all of that stuff is stolen. Right?
Yeah.
It's all stolen. It's great to see. It's great to see. I mean, you have an opportunity to see it, but it's all stolen. But anyway, so you go to Karnak and you go to the Avenue of the Sphinxes.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many are there, but it's a buttload, right?
Yeah. Hundreds.
It's a lot. Hundreds.
Yeah.
So you go up and then you notice a lot of them are missing.
Yeah.
Right. And so you go, and every time I'm in New York, I go to the Egyptian wing. I go to the Met every single time I'm there. I it's just such a great thing to do. Anyway, they've got a bunch of them there.
Well, you see it there. Also London Museum and
London Museum, Berlin, the
Paris.
Louvre. Yeah. Right. So anyway, you go to the Met. And they kind of brag about it. They show the pictures of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, and they have like maybe 10 or 12 at the Met. And it just kind of pisses me off, because when you go to Egypt and you see it, you see how much of it was just stolen.
Yeah.
And just removed. You see the gaps. And there are literally, I don't know if there's 1,000, but
close
it's
to
like, it's that many sphinxes on the avenue. And
most,
it's just one of those things that pisses me off.
Yeah, for people don't know, like there's Karnak is connected to Luxor, and there's this avenue of the sphinxes that connect the two, and that avenue is about 1.5 miles long.
It's long.
And and it's just aligned on either side with these sphinxes,
so beautiful, so incredible. And then you see the gaps, and then you go to the museum and you see what was in those gaps. And it's just like,
of course, those obelisks were taken as well. I mean, there's an obelisk in New York, and one in London, and one in Istanbul, and one at the Vatican, and one in Paris. And
somebody just posted this, Timothy. Check this out. What's in America that we are missing? Nothing. Nobody's stolen shit.
No, that's true.
There's nothing. What, a McDonald's arch? Is that
we just make weird replicas like the Washington Monument. Giant obelisk, but it's made up of 1,000 little bricks. So.
Check this out. Hatshepsut says,
Jimmy, your sound's cut off.
What's that? Say what? Timothy's clicking on stuff. See, he's clicking on stuff, and he just said he lost my sound.
There we go.
And quit clicking. Look in the camera and put the mouse down. Timothy, I will come over there. Don't make me do it.
I think I went to look in the comments and it ended up clicking something.
Yeah. So avoid the comments too. Avoid the comments. Anyway, Hatshepsut said, in a few places, she said, you can see my obelisk from across the Nile.
Yeah.
and you can see the gleaming electrum reflect the sun on the top.
Yeah.
Now, analyze that comment from her. Electrum is a combination of silver and gold,
Right.
right?
Right.
How was the process done? And picture the top. I mean, she built some of the biggest obelisks,
Yeah.
ever.
Yep. Her and her son.
Yeah, her and her son, for sure. Capped with gold and silver. So what was the process that was done? And those obelisks are here today.
Yeah.
We've got one at the Met in New York.
Yeah.
There's one at the Louvre. There's one on the Thames in Berlin. There's 13 of them in Rome at least.
Right.
Right. There's one in Berlin, and there's a few left there's one still left in Karnak.
Yeah.
And they took hers in Karnak and walled it in because they didn't want people to read it. So they put a wall around it.
Right.
But there's no electrum on the top of that.
Not now. I mean, it was probably taken off and, burnt down. I mean, there's all kinds of descriptions in the ancient world of these mixed metals, including the electrum. Plato talked about orichalcum being this mixed metal that the Atlanteans used. It was kind of a mix between copper and gold. And I mean, quite frankly, anytime you're working with gold, one of the alchemical processes that the Templars used to do to hide gold was they would beat it down into thin sheets like a gold leaf, and then they would feed it to mercury, and mercury would just eat the gold. It just eats it up. So it looks like you don't have any more gold left. And if you keep feeding the mercury this gold, eventually it turns into a hard, instead of being liquid, it turns into a hard substance that looks like lead at that point, where you can actually touch it, and you can even wear it as a pendant or something. And then if you just subjected this to an acid, the gold would come back, So
are you making stuff
hiding?
up?
No. It was the way of hiding the gold.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that was part of how they would hide it, is they would get it to travel from place to place.
Really?
Yeah.
Look,
yeah.
I will believe this,
and that's
stuff.
that's an alchemical process.
Yes, it is totally.
You're not going to normally read about that too many places. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. So, the secrets of alchemy, which everybody was chasing, do you think that all of that was at some point written down and studied at the library in Alexandria? Was it something that was shared at that point?
I think so. Many of the Greek philosophers were actually studying it. I mean, not just Plato, but Aristotle, Democritus, Pythagoras himself. They all studied alchemy. It was part of their study. I mean, and they learned it in Egypt. I mean, Pythagoras spent 30 years or something like that, in maybe 20 years in Egypt, learning from the priests there, and part of it was learning how to make metallic oxides, and this knowledge was later it was incorporated on. It's found on the Egyptian temple walls, if you know what you're looking at. And then it was later incorporated in the Gothic cathedrals of France by the Templars, as they were trying to bring knowledge over of Egypt and incorporate it into Europe. And this is what
Falconelli wrote about.
Right. That's what Falconelli wrote about. And this is really why, like, for example, the stained glass in the cathedrals, that was all made with metallic oxides. I mean, you had to have a knowledge of metallurgy to even make some of those colors. And, it was, and they incorporated symbolism that alluded to these same processes that were found in the Egyptian temple walls. And for that matter, and this isn't in Fulcanelli, but it's a fact. When the Templars came over into Egypt and they were looking for ancient artifacts and they were looking for ancient knowledge and they were trying to understand alchemy, and they met with different groups, including the Coptic Christians and the Sabaeans and the Druze and others who were all, and so the different Bedouin groups that were in the area, different Moorish traditions, Islamic traditions. They came to learn about alchemy, and they also came to learn about Giza, and the ancient name for Giza, which had been preserved, was the name Rostau, and Rostau just means underworld. So it was implying that Giza has this whole underground complex, right? And now the Templars, Rostau didn't mean anything to them in Egyptian. They just learned this was the name of the place, Rostau. So they transliterated that into Latin. And in Latin, Ros is rose and Tau is cross. So they adopted the symbol of the rose cross to represent this Rostau, this underworld of Giza. And this is why also on those cathedrals, they built them, when viewed from the air, they're in the shape of a cross, but then they have the rose windows in them, which makes them rose crosses, which is, again, it was alluding to the science and the tradition that came out of Egypt. And this is, again, why Fulcanelli, who was, a very adept alchemist, they think was probably also Schwaller de Lubitz, who was, this famous Egyptologist, because he was taking that knowledge from Egypt and he was, applying it to understood that it was applied to the cathedrals. And
the trippy thing about Schwaller, so many trippy things about Schwaller, but he wrote in French,
right?
So his books were not widely read.
No,
and very limited in distribution. Very, very limited. John Anthony West gets a hold of it. He's struggling with the French, right?
Right.
Brings in somebody to translate it. Ends up, translating the book. But we know of Schwaller today because of those initial translations that happened in 1960. Otherwise, even that would have slipped through the cracks, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and he wrote, Schwaller wrote a number of books. Of course, Temple of Man was his big one.
Right.
But he wrote on a number of things, and with symbolism, Egyptian symbolism, and
John Anthony West told me he was living in Ibiza at the time, mm-hmm. and doing his hedonistic bohemian thing, probably running around naked with sandals on, every day, doing what you do in Ibiza in the late 50s.
Right.
But the house that he was staying at had one of Schwaller's books.
Oh,
and
cool.
That's how it all happened.
Oh, wow.
It was quite by accident, and he told me the whole story. And so he goes and tries to find more of his work. Couldn't find any of it. It was like this mystery guy to him. He eventually chased the stuff down, and we've talked about it on this show many times, and it's a fascinating story. But today, to hear Schwaller quoted like we do, I got to give kudos to John Anthony West on all of that in his due diligence of this, and then taking that work to the rest of the world and expanding on it and actually doing the research.
Yeah. Well, in Chevalier de Lubit's writings, he does allude to alchemical operations. He certainly talks about the classical elements.
He does.
And how they alluded to different things, both in Egyptian ritual, but also, in alchemical preparation, and he also pointed out the role of the Greeks in studying with the Egyptians, which really, if I hadn't have read that in Schwaller de Lubitz, I don't know if I would have really learned of that, because even in school when I studied philosophy, they didn't really tell you that these Greeks were going over into Egypt and learning these ideas from the Egyptians, so they kind of just kept it Greek centric,
So before we take our break, let's talk about something. If I become a member of the Knights Templar, if I become a member of Freemasons and I work my way through this and I do the work, do I eventually get access to the secret rooms with the secret stuff and learn about alchemy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, alchemy is a fundamental part of both the Templar work and the Masonic work, and I will say that in when I do tours of Egypt, we do have access to several rooms that are closed to the public at many of the temples, specifically because those rooms do talk about the alchemical process in them. They also have Templar graffiti in them, and showing that the Templar Order was studying these things in those rooms, clear back in the 1100s. So it's
the secret stuff. Will my teeth fall out? Will my teeth fall out? My skin fall
Hopefully
out?
Hopefully not. That's more of a metaphor, of this idea that the salamander, would turn into this lizardy being, but yeah, there's some speculation that if certain alchemical substances are put in certain electrostatic capacitors, that it could produce a radiation which could cause you to lose your teeth and your hair. And then it would all have to grow back. So
that's why you wear the vest with the jewels,
right?
Okay, I'm going to share something with you that I want to talk about, and I know that you know about this, but the audience doesn't. All right, so the obelisk that is at the Met in the garden behind the Met. That came from Alexandria.
Correct.
And it was moved there, but that's another story. I'm not going to get to that. But Vanderbilt decides that New York should have an obelisk. Everybody else has got one. And so, I'm going to pay for this. And let's get an obelisk to New York.
Yeah.
So he hires a crew and they go to Alexandria, where there are two. One is Cleopatra's Needle. It's lying on its side. They didn't want that one. They should have taken that one. It was a better one. But anyway, because it was buried in sand and they thought it was damaged, and it wasn't. That's now in England, right? That's on the Thames,
right.
The fallen one. But the erect one, so they go and they pull it down. They bring in all this stuff. That's a whole nother story in of itself. But when they bring in the hydraulics and they lift it up and they tilt it to its side, they see in the base of the obelisk, it's sitting on a 50-ton base. There's a square hole in the middle. And what's in the square hole.
There's Masonic implements that are in there.
A compass and a square.
Right. And
a compass and a square.
And a level and a plumb.
And a level.
Yeah.
And so they were like, holy shit. And so the Freemasons in America, so they pull it down, they take everything, they take the implements, they take the base, they throw it on this boat. They didn't just throw it on a boat, they cut a hole in the boat and stuck it in there. And eventually it gets it makes its way to New York. But the Freemasons find out about this. And so when they finally get the obelisk through the streets of New York and, tow it with a train, they build train tracks, they do all this. They get it behind, up Fifth Avenue, they get it behind the museum, and they have this big ceremony. 10,000 Freemasons showed up for that ceremony. You can see the photographs. It's incredible. Why? They said it was their obelisk.
That's right.
Isn't that an amazing story?
Yeah, if you go to right now, even to this day at Luxor, there's a museum of Tutmosis III, and in that museum, you will see there were certain jewels that Tutmosis III he wore a collar with a square on it. His head of the military wore a collar with a level on it, and his head priest wore a collar with a plumb on it. Well, these are the three principal jewels that are worn by the principal officers within every Masonic lodge. So the fact that you see this, and you also see them wearing aprons and having rods and other things that you find in the Masonic lodge, it suggests that it was a tradition that went back to, potentially as far back as Tutmosis III. I mean, who was erecting these obelisks, and so it became a symbol of it. And the other thing too is the tip of the obelisk, the pyramid that's on the top of the obelisk was always referred to as the Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And Ben in ancient Egyptian meant both light and stone. But if you reverse the word, and so the philosopher's stone, the thing that was said to be able to transmute everything from base metals into gold and do this magic of alchemy, was referred to as the Ben in ancient Egypt, and it was connected with what was known as the Bennu bird, which was the phoenix in ancient Egypt. And that word Ben, if you reverse it, you get the word Neb, and Neb was the ancient Egyptian word for gold. So there was this connection. There was this word play that the Egyptians would do. I mean. You also find it with Siwa means brain in ancient Egyptian. And if you reverse Siwa, you get Awis, which means consciousness in ancient Egyptian. So they're always doing these word plays. But the fact that Ben meant both light and stone, and if you reverse it, you get Neb, which meant gold. It was clearly a play on.
Do you think that Egyptologists who say we got to go to the Orthodox version of Egyptology? This is not my opinion. This is just what is taught.
Right.
That we don't know what the Ben stones were for. We don't have any idea. There is nothing, so, and then, so they'll say, well, no, but that's not a Ben, that's a pyramidium. And that's from the top of it. But it evolved, obelisk evolved out of the Ben. It's like, wait a minute. Either you know nothing or you know something.
Right.
But there is something about the origin of the Ben, the pyramid shape, which obviously we can talk about obelisk too as well, that they don't want to discuss. That's a crazy part of it. I think it ties into maybe even Atlantis.
It could, and there's the other thing is too. Sometimes the Ben are depicted with like a little window in them, and two people looking out of it. And some people like Eric von Daniken have suggested that, oh, this Ben is actually like a capsule, for a rocket, and that the obelisk was just trying to mimic a rocket, so to speak, with the tip being the Ben, being the space capsule that the gods would be in, and they would look out the window. I don't know if that's how can we prove that one way or another, but it is interesting that alchemy, without alchemy, you wouldn't have. Jack Parsons, for example, who developed the solid state rocket propellant for NASA at the Jet Propulsion Labs, he developed that out of an old alchemical formula where he was studying alchemy. So, and that's where he got it from. So, there's a connection there, both alchemically and potentially, having to do with rockets in the ancient world.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Let's take our break right here. Our guest tonight, the one and only Grandmaster of the Knights Templar, right here is with us, Timothy Hogan. We're talking about ancient alchemy and everything else that we can squeeze into this conversation. Timothy, you stay right there. I am your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back after this short break.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel to get your alerts and access to over 2,000 videos. Click that subscribe button right now. Walk into the vortex on Gaia TV. It's Fade to Black for the screen. Simple to do. Go to Gaia.com, search Jimmy Church, or click on the link below. Follow Fade to Black on Twitter at JChurch Radio. Get all of the show updates every single day. It's now called X, but who cares? Go to JimmyChurchRadio.com and become a Fadernaut. Get a membership. That's right. Everything is commercial free. You have access to downloads, and you get to call yourself a Fadernaut. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit riverwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com.
All right. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Timothy Hogan is with us. That's right. Worldwide Grandmaster of the Knights Templar, and amongst other things, author, researcher, world traveler, lecturer, and of course, one of my partners over on Gaia. And you can go and search Timothy over on Gaia and check out all of his excellent stuff. And I think we did an episode together on Gaia.
We did, yeah. Yeah, we did.
A few years ago. And you can check that out too as well. So, Timothy.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for There's a lot of reasons, but the Rosetta Stone and the deciphering of hieroglyphs and the ancient language, the ancient sacred language, which only happened, and this is the crazy part, in 1822.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very modern thing. How dangerously close were we to not knowing any of this stuff?
Well, interestingly, there was a tradition that was passing down this knowledge within Europe. I mean, certainly when the Templars were studying, first started traveling into Egypt, they didn't know, they couldn't translate the hieroglyphs. I mean, they tried to speculate on it. There were groups like the Sabaeans who had a knowledge of some of the hieroglyphs and some of the meaning behind some of the things that were on the walls. And the Templars were able to, they had come out of a Gnostic tradition that had a connection with Manichaeanism. And Manichaeanism was started by a prophet named Mani, who had come out of Egypt, actually. And his early version of Christianity, shall we say, his Gnostic version of Christianity spread all the way to China, and some would even say it contributed to Bon Buddhism in Tibet. But and he understood some alchemical knowledge as well. So the Templars had inherited some of that already. They met with the Sabaeans. By the way, the Sabaeans get their name from the ancient Egyptian word Saba, which just meant Stargate.
That's right.
And so they were the Sabaeans, and they're mentioned in the Quran as being accepted as along with Jews, Christians, and Muslims as being people of the book. They were Hermeticists. They worshipped Hermes, which when the Muslims came across them, they said, "Hey, just change the name from Hermes to Idris, and we're cool." And so they said, "Okay, sure, no problem." So they started worshiping Hermes as Idris from that point forward. But they of course, Hermes was Thoth or Tahuti, so that was that alchemical tradition. He was the inventor of alchemy, and they existed. The Sabaeans largely came from the area of Göbekli Tepe and Haran, what was known as Haran, and the Templars were over there at Göbekli Tepe. If you go to the quarries at Göbekli Tepe, you'll find Templar graffiti from the 1100s. So even though the site was rediscovered in the 1990s, the Templars had already been there doing research, 1,000 years ago. So they were looking at these areas, but in particular Egypt. They also went to Ethiopia because there were a lot of texts that were religious texts that the Coptic Christians in Ethiopia were preserving. They were also said to be preserving one of the arks of the Covenant, and according to myth, King Solomon would fly in his flying craft to Ethiopia to meet with his wife, the Queen of Sheba. And Sheba, the name Sheba also comes from Saba. So the Queen of Sheba was the queen of the Stargate, and the fact that the King Solomon was connected with her, it suggests a lot behind at least how the Templars interpreted it. When King Solomon was demanding all these burnt sacrifices at his temple, and when he would receive 666 talents of gold a year in exchange for bread, these were metaphors for the part of the alchemical process where you could extract a secret salt that was made of metallic metal, platinum metals in a monoatomic state. You could extract this out of plant matter. You could extract it out of animal matter. But you had to calcinate it down. You had to burn the thing down. And this is probably why he demanded these burnt sacrifices. And when it talks about him receiving 666 talents of gold a year in exchange for bread, well, bread was another name for this secret salts, the metallic salts. And
is this manna from heaven?
Yeah, this was the manna from heaven. This was when, like Moses, he burned the golden calf into a powder that he sprinkled on the water and fed to the watering Hebrews. I mean, this was the manna, and this was the bread. And this is also why Solomon was transmuting. He was changing gold into bread, and that's what that number 666 in the ancient world, that was the number of transformation. It had nothing to do with the devil. It had to do with transformation. Even in the story of Jesus, he's said to be crucified on a cross with 3 nails. Well, nail in Hebrew is the letter Vav. Vav literally means nail, and it has a numeric value of 6. So if he was crucified with 3 nails, 666, that was the number of transformation.
You're going to get me in trouble. You're going to get me in trouble.
well, the word Christos itself, or Christ, which is translated as Christ, the Greek word Christos, if you remove the T or the tau, which is the cross, the Greek word Christos becomes Chrysos, which is the Greek word for gold.
All of those Christian, all of those fundamental, all of those YouTube channels are going to be sitting around going, okay, man, so Jimmy Church and Timothy Hogan, man. The other day on Fade to Black said, I can already hear the but here's and I'm not some biblical scholar.
Sure.
But this is where I trip out. I'm glad the conversation went in this direction.
Okay.
I'm one of those that I just look at what we have and just try to learn something from it. Okay, so the idea of Jesus, whatever you want, being real.
Yeah.
I'm on the fence about it. But here is where I kind of think he was a real person. Not for any other reason except for the disciples, which, not in real time, but in later translations, revealed and talked about him. So it seems to me that he was a real person at some point because of that.
He was probably a real person, but there were many of the stories of the Bible were grafted onto him and onto his story. I mean, because the most of these stories can be found in earlier myths, earlier texts. I mean, earlier ancient Egyptian texts, certainly Pythagorean ideas.
Osiris, man, Isis,
exactly.
Horus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like, for example, when Jesus caught 153 fishes, that was something that Pythagoras was also credited with doing, prior to Jesus, that he caught 153 fishes. And that's because 153 alluded to, it was a ratio number that alluded to the inner geometry of what's known as the Vesica Pisces, or what's now known as the Jesus fish that you see on the back of cars. But the internal geometry of it had if you were to put a cross on the inside of it, the short arm of that cross had a ratio proportion of 153. And so it was known as the number of the fish. by the Pythagoreans. And of course, this then got grafted onto the New Testament, along with several other, along with, for example, Osiris was said to be born on December 25th, and that there were 3 wise men that came that brought him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And this is why the Egyptians were buried with gold, frankincense, and myrrh. The pharaohs would be buried with this. So some people believe that the 3 wise men actually represented the 3 stars of Orion's belt that would point to the spot where the sun would rise on December 25th. And of course, Orion was associated with the god Osiris, like we talked about earlier. So these were all things that kind of get grafted onto the Jesus story. Doesn't mean that Jesus didn't exist, but the symbolism existed earlier. Heck, for that matter, we can both acknowledge that Hebrew has been around for longer than Jesus has, right? Well, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the word Tav, or the letter Tav, which means cross. And it's made up of 3 of the Hebrew letter Vav, which again means nail. So literally the symbolism at the end of the Hebrew alphabet, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is a cross with 3 nails. That symbolism existed for centuries before Jesus ever came into being, or Yeshua. So we have to acknowledge that there were different mythological elements and symbolism that were grafted onto the Jesus story, even if he existed as a great exemplar to humanity. So
when we get into specifics, and again, everybody, please, I'm not some biblical scholar. I know very little about it. I've read the Bible, a couple of times, just to check it out. And I just came away with science fiction, and it's a fantastic read. Okay, that's me. All right, but that's just my take. It's an unbelievably beautiful book, science fiction.
Right.
But when you go to Saqqara and you look at the pyramid text, and you really, really, really study the pyramid text and what was represented there, that was 2,000 years before Christ.
Right.
That 2,000 years, not a couple of weeks, not the same general. No, 2,000 years prior.
Yeah.
Look at Abydos and those the tombs there in the ancient tombs that go back to 3,200 BC. So now we're at 33,000 years before Christ.
Right.
So don't to suggest one thing or the other. That part doesn't matter to me. I'm saying that these religious aspects for the Egyptians were well in play and were very deep and very sincere.
Yeah. Heck, even Mary, the name Mary is an Egyptian name.
Don't get me in trouble. You're trying to get me in trouble, Tim.
Well,
You're just going for it.
Yeah, there's these illusions. There's lots of other things. Like, for example, when you see the pharaohs and you see like King Tut and you see the serpent coming out of the brow of the pharaoh. This was really what this represented, was the third eye of spiritual traditions. Certainly what you find in the East, but also you find it in the Christian texts. One of the titles for Jesus early on was Jesus the Nazarene, and that's sometimes translated as Jesus of Nazareth. But we know there wasn't a town called Nazareth until almost 50 years after Jesus was born. according to Roman records. But so the word would have been Jesus the Nazarene, and the Nazar, it was Aramaic and it just meant brow or forehead. And so Jesus the Nazarene was one whose brow or his forehead was opened, I mean, just like, and the symbolism for that was always the serpent coming out of the brow. And
Is that heretical?
It's
are
not
you a
heretical.
heretic?
It's
It's
not.
not?
Well, maybe some churches, if they have a strict dogma, they may have their own interpretation. But the fact of the matter is, Nazarene means one whose brow is open. It comes from Nazar, which was Aramaic, it meant brow. And
while we're on the subject, and I just interrupted the great Timothy Hogan, and I will probably do it one more time before the end of the show. But going back to what we were talking about earlier about Akhenaten and the Rosetta Stone in 1822, once that, we didn't know who Akhenaten was until we were able to go back and look at all of the ancient sacred script.
Right.
But in doing so, to find out a few things about Akhenaten that I find completely strange. The first thing is, so much.
Yeah.
But the first thing is, there is no written record of him until he became pharaoh. Right. We don't know all his brothers and sisters. We know their titles, but he just appears. All right. So anyway, he becomes co-pharaoh for 5 years, and then Pops dies and he becomes pharaoh. But what if there was a heretic pharaoh? It would have been him. Yeah. Because of what we now understand was just a completely insane thing to do, which was take a structured culture that had been solid for a couple of thousand years and go, you know what? Fuck this. Right?
Yeah.
The artwork. He changed the art. He changed the government. Yeah, you had to move the capital to El Armana, changes the religion, changes everything that kept Egypt solid and moving forward. Egypt was a conservative, country. They just did their thing and didn't change stuff. And he goes and flips everything over for somebody that we didn't know anything about him. And now the depictions and the art and everything else. That's one thing, but we were just talking about Jesus, and this is why I bring this up. He brings in monotheism.
Right.
If you want to tip a country over and cause dissension amongst the troops, right? Go from multiple gods, polytheism, into monotheism, and let's start arguments. Let's just start there, right? You either believe in this or you're wrong. In polytheism, everything works. It doesn't matter what God. Nobody's fighting over that. Right. But if you bring in one like he did, he tipped everything over. He ignored the military, everything that was correct. The Mott of Egypt, he just threw it out the window. But it's very similar to Christianity.
Yeah.
And you had the Holy Trinity with that and some other things. Very, very similar feelings to Jesus. Now, am I flying over the target here when I think in these terms?
No, I think it's right. Well, you have to remember too that, again, Judaism probably came out of the Atenist tradition of Akhenaten. I mean, when Akhenaten was deposed, the Amun priesthood took over again. They tried to erase any mention of Akhenaten, including his wife, Nefertiti, by the way, and his children had to flee Egypt. In fact, there's even speculation that Scotland gets its name from Princess Scotia, who was Akhenaten's daughter. And that's where Scotland actually gets its name from, was from this Egyptian princess. But they all had to flee Egypt, and they had to go into hiding to this. And it's part of the reason why even King Tutankhamun's tomb, it took him so long to find it, was because King Tut was Akhenaten's son, and his name was originally Tutankhaten, and in fact his throne says Tutankhaten on it, which was to the glory of Aten, and he had to change it to Tutankhamun to appease the Amun priesthood, and so he changed a lot of things around, but it should also be pointed out, he also said that he said, look, stop worshiping the gods. The gods are your cousins, basically. They're your ancestors. He said, even the gods worship the one God, which was the Aten. And so there's some speculation that this was a secret doctrine that was reserved amongst the pharaohs, and then Akhenaten just brought it forward into public and made it public. And this, of course, stirred everything up. And he was also, Akhenaten was kind of a poet. He was a
hippie, man. He was a hippie. I think he smoked weed.
Yeah, he was definitely Blue Lotus. He was,
he was right. Well, Aten here is. I'm not, again, some scholar on this. I just research it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Aten,
it was a disc.
Okay, let me just say this: Akhenaten's mom, T, had a fake lake built.
Yeah.
Right by her husband. It was a gift to her.
Right.
And on this lake was her boat.
Yes.
And her boat was called Aten.
Right.
That's like, and so you go back and, well, was he a god? Was he something? Well, we have a few references, but the first real reference was Queen T's boat, the Aten, that was in her fake lake.
That's right.
It's like a whole bizarre story.
Very bizarre. And then again, when you look at Aten being like my Aten in ancient Egyptian, it's Aten I. And of course, consonants are, can be interchangeable somewhat. And so Aten I literally becomes Adonai in Hebrew, which means Lord. And so that's probably the origin of it. We know some of the Psalms, for example, are 100% word for word from the hymn of Aten that Akhenaten had composed. So
which is beautiful.
It's there in the Old Testament. I mean,
it's beautiful. It's so well written.
Yeah. Yeah, and they describe everything in the same order and I think it's Psalm. I want to say it's Psalm 125, maybe, but it's word for word hymn of Aten. If you look up hymn of Aten Psalms, you'll be able to find it on the internet.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really well written. When you read it today, I don't know if something's lost in translation or if it's been gentrified, but it reads very modern. It's just well written.
Yeah, really. It suggests that the sun shines on everybody. Of all backgrounds, of all persuasions. It's the sun shines on everybody the same, and that this is the symbol of God. That the source of light, this light of God, is shared by everybody, and there's no one person that gets more of it than anybody else, and we're all a part of that ray of the divine,
And the way that he had it depicted in the artwork, where the rays ended in hands,
right? Yeah, and
reaching out to touch.
Yeah, you'll see it too. They're holding these ankhs, and he's breathing in. He's breathing in the sunlight, and it's the life force. This is an idea that was really tied within the Eastern traditions to chi or ki, this idea that there's this life force that's in the air, and that it's energized by the sun. And in alchemy later on, I mean, centuries later in alchemy, this was referred to as the secret Mercury force. That it was a life force. It was a vital life force that could be found in the sunshine, and that it can be found in the air. And this is the reason why Mercury was always depicted as flying around in the air, because Mercury was also associated with it. So
now, okay, let's
and
have some
of course
fun.
Mercury was closest to the sun, so
All right, let's step out of bounds. Can we step out of bounds?
yeah, of course.
Let's step out of bounds. When I look at Akhenaten, both visually and the way that he spoke and taught, I think he was an alien. And
He certainly had a code head.
But right.
Right.
But did you just say Conad?
Yeah, well, he did. I mean,
he was a
had an
Conad.
elongated
So was
skull.
and Nefertiti and his kids and everything were depicted the same way.
Right.
So, but before we even go there, Egyptologists will say that Aten was the sun.
Right.
But if you look at the translations a little bit deeper, it says disc.
Yes. Solar disc.
So right now, what am I leading to? I'm not so sure, but it's too easy to land on a sun thing here.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the way that the artwork is presented, my mind goes somewhere else. I'm just depending on my eyes. What am I looking at here?
Well, they alluded to it was not uncommon for the Egyptians to allude to certain star systems and also our sun as doorways. They actually referred to them as doorways to other parts of the universe. I mean, with the idea that you could actually go into the sun and it would take you to somewhere else in the universe. And maybe not coincidentally, we do see a lot of UAP activity coming out of the sun, and so maybe there was a connection there with Akhenaten. He may have been a crossbred human alien, and that could explain some of his strange deformities. It is interesting that we find the other place that we find these elongated skulls like Akhenaten seemed to have, of course, is on the other side of the world in places like Peru, with the Paracas skulls. But we also find them in Tulum, in Mexico, and they connect something to the ancient world, and I think the later head binding done by cultures was to try to mimic that. But the fact that Akhenaten in particular and Nefertiti had these elongated skulls, and their children did too, it suggests some sort of genetic
it does
connection to something. Yeah.
You've been to the Egyptian Museum of Civilization.
Yeah.
Not the Grand Museum, everybody. It's the
Mummy Museum.
Yeah, which is, oh man.
Yeah.
Just a beautiful, beautiful new museum.
Yeah.
But when you go up to Akhenaten there, and that statue is probably 18 feet tall. I don't know, 20 feet tall. It's pretty big.
Yeah.
But you go up to that and you take a really hard look at it. That's one thing. Back up and watch other people that don't know who Akhenaten is come up and look at that statue. and look at their reaction, because you see a very repeatable style of art throughout Egypt for 3,000 years, right? And then Akhenaten comes along, and it ain't that.
No.
Because you're so used to seeing, the pharaohs and gods, and, 1 foot in front of the other, and, all these. And then suddenly Akhenaten comes along, and you look at that, and something is not right.
Yeah.
Something's not right there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Saying it's a deformity.
Well,
one. You brought up Nefertiti. I have to ask you this question. I'm sorry, everybody, for speaking like this, but Nefertiti also just popped out of nowhere. Okay,
right. And her headdress is actually it's actually a Mayan headdress that she's wearing.
And so, what are the odds of Akhenaten, who's got this alleged deformity or whatever, turns around and marries somebody that we know nothing about?
Right.
We don't know anything about her past. They called her
from a foreign land. That's all.
Right.
That's right. Land. Right.
With the same deformity.
Right.
I have issues with that. And then look at the kids.
Well, they were clearly trying to breed together. You know what I mean? Because they had the same unusual attributes, shall we say? And we do find that we find that, of course, in Peru, but we also find it at Tulum in the Yucatan, and the headdress, that Nefertiti was wearing is a headdress that you would find amongst the Nahuatl cultures, including the Olmecs, the Mayans, the Toltecs, and the Aztecs. And it may be that Nefertiti, it may be that boat of tea was used to go over to the Yucatan to try to find their cousins. The Egyptians, may have been trying to find their cousins, and they brought back Nefertiti, and that's who Akhenaten ended up marrying. And I wouldn't rule that out.
That's a wild idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule it out. Let's put it that way. I mean, so Akhenaten's grandfather was Tutmosis III, who had done all the obelisks. And also, according to the Thule manuscript, which was a manuscript that I believe the Vatican now has, it's a papyrus that from the Royal Annals of Tutmosis III, and in it talks about flying craft showing up in Egypt during the time of Tutmosis III. These fiery discs, these circle discs, showed up in the sky, and that the people threw themselves on their bellies, and that the circle discs shot fish and other things out of them, and which had never been recorded in Egypt before. And so Tutmosis III, he recorded it. He ordered incense to be burned to Amun-Ra, and then it talks about how, at first there were just a couple of these craft, and then after a few days had passed over, they were numerous, like all throughout the sky, all of these fire circle discs. And it says that Tutmosis III was taken up into one of these fire circle discs where he learned the mysterious ways of the gods. And after which he came back down and he set up the first schools of Egypt, the real schools that were, after he had this experience. And it was then his grandson, Akhenaten, who then brings out this new religion, you know what I mean? And it suggests that there could be a connection there, that even the pharaoh Tutmosis III was secretly worshiping these fire circle discs, like the Aten, and that it was passed down eventually to Akhenaten, who They made it public, and it really upset the hierarchy of Egypt at that point. So
when all of these ideas are put out there, and I'm so fascinated with it, I listen and read and research all of the work from Egyptologists around the world, because they bring, facts forward. But
yes.
when I go through the facts, I'm just like, this
Yes,
is
some of them fall short.
much crazy. Yeah. This is much crazier, but they feed you just enough to understand that it was an absolutely unbelievable period of our history that was completely advanced and was not only way ahead of their time, but clearly we don't understand most of it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, even Tutmosis III's mother was Hatshepsut, and she,
yes,
by some accounts, she had taken a boat, took a bunch of boats to this faraway land that some people think now it might have been Australia. So the Egyptians
and came
were
back
traveling
with
a lot
every
more.
animal. Right. When you stand in front of that and you look at the animals that are on these boats,
Right.
it's like, holy crap! There's a giraffe.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Leopards.
Yeah.
There's
leopards. Yeah.
And there's tombs. There's Egyptian tombs that portray other animals that they shouldn't have known about, like woolly mammoths and giant sloths and kangaroos and things that they shouldn't have known about, but clearly they did. So it implies a lot more traveling and a lot more knowledge that was being passed down than they're normally given credit for.
Well, let's talk about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, we're right there. I mean,
Yeah,
we might as
yeah,
well.
yeah.
We got Jesus out of the way, so we
Right.
got Moses out of the way, so let's
Right.
the Ark of the Covenant. I'm going to start with a basic question. When you go to Elephantine Island,
Yeah.
in Egypt, which I've been to, and
Yeah.
so have you. So the big rumor is that's where the big guy was stashed and is still there,
Right.
allegedly. Okay, but that's the big story. And
Right.
they talk about it when you go to the island. They all talk about the Ark, but what is there today is the original Nazi archaeological offices are there.
That's
because
true.
they were looking for the Ark straight out of,
and one of the earliest Jewish temples ever to ever exist. It was there on Elephantine Island in Egypt.
Yeah, it's a remarkable place. When you walk around Elephantine Island, everybody, just so you know, you're walking around paths and stuff, and it's insanely cool. It's right in the middle of the Nile, right off of Aswan.
Yeah.
But you are walking on pottery. You can bend down on the path and pick something up with hieroglyphs on it. Right?
Well, it almost looks like a bomb went off, in the island.
Exactly.
There's temples that are blown apart. There's giant 100-ton granite boxes that are just blown over
on their sides at weird angles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yep. There's even the remnants of temples that were literally just blown into like a million little pieces, and we have
and the island is covered with it. It's just covered with it. There was something catastrophic went down there, or maybe multiple times.
And there was a pyramid that used to be there
that's right.
Is just there's remnants of now, but it's
when you walk up that one path, and you're facing south, and there's that doorway at the end of the path on that cliff.
Yes.
Right. And it's just there, and you can walk out through that and you just put it all together and look around. It must have been spectacular at one point.
Amazing. Alexander the Great was said to have visited there. And there's some graffiti associated with him. There's the Ptolemies were there, but there was.
Is the Ark of the Covenant there?
I think one of the arcs was there. We have to understand that all of the Egyptian temples at one point in time had an ark in their sanctum sanctorum, in their holy of holies. I mean, there's a replica of one to this day that's still found at the Temple of Horus at Edfu, in its sanctum sanctorum. And these arks were always depicted on boats. And just like the gods were depicted, the Neiters as coming over on boats, and it implies that it was a technology that was brought over on boats and then deposited in these temples around Egypt. And every sanctum sanctorum had an ark. The arks were probably electrostatic generator or capacitors.
Were they the same as the ark that is depicted in the Bible?
Same as the ark that's
Same
depicted
function,
in the Bible.
same
you know,
function,
layers
dimension.
of gold and wood,
Right.
and then winged figures on the top lid, and in both instances they were described as the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies and would have cords tied to his ankles in case he died, so that they could pull him out, you know, because it was so dangerous to go into the Holy of Holies that he could die. And if he did, he'd be pulled out by those cords, and then the new priest would be, you know, in line to take over the function of handling the arks in the sanctum sanctorums. But you find this both in the Hebrew myth and in the Egyptian myth, you know, associated with these arks. So,
Well, I was with, I'm not going to say his name, but I was with the director of Aswan.
mhm.
Okay. And so, you know, we're just shooting the shit. And I go, okay, man, is the Ark of the Covenant really here on Elephantine Island? Timothy, he looked at me in my eyeballs and goes, yes.
Yeah.
I go,
Well,
can I see it? He goes, when you come back, we'll make that happen.
well,
But
there
that's
is
what he said. It came out of his mouth, man.
there is a chamber that's under the Temple of Tutmosis III, where it's believed that one of these arks is kept, and they keep a big lead door on it to keep you from being able to go in there. And but it is probably one of the arks, and there is
Have you been in that room? Have you been in that room?
I have been in that.
Have you seen
been in that
so
room.
you've seen the ark?
I haven't seen I've been in the room where the ark is normally kept, but the ark wasn't there when I went.
Yeah,
in.
that's what they told me too as well. That's what they told me.
But there's something that is on the island that is actually converting the granite into slate. And that is a process that normally takes place over hundreds of thousands of years. So there's something that's emitting such a high energy that it's causing this type of transmutation on the island itself. And it's probably the ark. These arks, what made them so significant was, I mean, they were electrostatic capacitors. And if you put, if you ever notice, if you look at the Egyptian temple walls, oftentimes they'll depict these arcs. In fact, at Dendera, if you go up the staircase or down the staircase, you'll see people holding the ark, and their feet are going in the direction of where they're walking, but their heads are looking at where the ark is that they're carrying. And they're carrying them up to the top level of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. But there's other depictions of these arks all over the place. I mean, at Seti the First at Abydos, there's the what's known as the Seti room, which is closed to the public, but it actually has one of these arks depicted, and it has Templar graffiti surrounding the ark with three red crosses, like the cross behind me, surrounding the ark. And then the pharaoh is always depicted as holding a cone of bread, and this cone of bread is the manna from the Bible that goes inside the ark, according to the biblical tradition. And this substance is it's a monoatomic gold substance, and it's superconductive. So if you take this superconductive substance, you put it inside an electrostatic capacitor, that arc is going to produce a tremendous amount of electricity within the region. I even think that if you look at the surrounding the temples, like at a good example is at the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, but also at Kumombo and other places. There's these butterfly clamps that binded the outer casing stones around the temples together, and these where these butterfly clamps were these were metal inserts, and I think they were almost like the receivers for this electricity that would be broadcast from the ark within the region. And so it'd be such a thing that the temple itself would probably just hum. And if you went and you touched any of the statues or anything, it would shock you. And which just seemed like magic to anyone visiting the temples at the time. But then what would the ark itself in this Holy of Holies was this ark that was issuing forth this electricity.
What was the energy used for? What was the electricity used for?
That's a good question. The most of these Holy of Holies are also listed as stargates, and there's a speculation that the pharaoh would go into the Holy of Holies, would sit on a throne that was conductive, that it would build up this electricity, and it would literally, maybe he was on Blue Lotus or some other hallucinogenic, something else with hallucinogenic properties. But the theory was that it would, as he was sitting on this throne, it would project his consciousness to a different star system. More than likely in the Orion Nebula, and that there were beings in this area that would then teach him things that he would bring back to the masses that were worshiping him, under him. And at least this is what it appears to be connected with. So the electricity was generating some sort of a stargate, and that the pharaoh would go through it, at least through with his consciousness. He'd go through these false doors, these false gates that would take him to these other star systems where he would learn things. And this is depicted actually in the Sanctum Sanctorum of Hatshepsut's temple, which is closed to the public. But I've seen what's in there, and there's actually a mural of Hatshepsut going through a stargate and learning from these gods that she then brings the knowledge back and teaches it to the masses that are worshiping her. So
when we talk about, before we run out of time, again, just referencing research and listening to Egyptologists talk about this stuff, when we observe, going back to Giza and before, and looking at Saqqara, and of course the Great Sphinx, and you go back to these temple sites, they did all of that. This is what the Egyptologists just don't. They did all of that. If we look at the historical record and take it literally, they did it without enough population. Population was small. They did it without wood. They did it without beasts. They did it without, you know what I mean? Everything that we would normally relate to construction like this. It wasn't with palm tree levers that they used to take water from the Nile.
There's,
you know what I mean?
You go on the roof, for example, of Hatshepsut's temple. The roof is composed of these 100-ton stones that are all fitting together like a jigsaw puzzle, encyclopedian architecture, which makes it earthquake proof. But the fact that this roof is being held up literally by these 100-ton stones are up there, and they're not falling in, after thousands of years. And we find the same type of architecture on the foundation of the Giza Plateau. We find it in some of the earliest temples of Egypt, like the Osirian and the Sphinx temple. And we find it in over in the Americas and places like Peru, and so it's at Cusco. I mean, so there's some real, questions that need to be asked there about, how did they even get these stones up here? For example, on the, you find stones that big in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. But you also find it on the roof of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. And, how did they even get that stone up there? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It baffles the mind. I mean, that's probably at least probably equivalent to maybe a 10-story building, and
for sure. So when you go down into the Asarian, and you stand in the middle of those two rows, right?
Yeah.
And you stand there.
Yeah.
Honestly, all you can do is go WTF.
You're right.
That's it.
Right.
There's no other place to go.
Well, and the
doesn't make any sense.
Goes another 15 stories down. You know what I mean? Under the water.
They found a second one. There's a second one. Yeah, it's about a mile away. From the Asarian, and the director there pulled me up, and he goes, "Okay, man, I'm going to show you something." He takes me up on the top of the hill. He goes, "You see that over there?" And I could see the wheelbarrows and the tents,
sure.
Right? And he goes, "Second Asarian. We just found it."
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think they were, these were places where there was spring water that was coming up. I think that's what
you can see the plumbing, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they were extracting these monoatomics out of that spring water.
It's a machine. Machine, man. It's a machine. You can see it when you stand there. Now, okay, the block, but then, dude, they roofed that thing in.
Yeah.
Right? With the biggest stones you have ever seen in your life.
Right.
And
each one weighing at least 100 tons.
At least. And so what was the function of that? You could see they were flowing water. You can see it. You could see how it was being channeled. You could see it, and you could see all of it. You could see the pipe. You could see where it all came in.
Right.
But why? And don't tell me it's religious. Don't say, and don't tell me it was Seti the First.
No,
because
he built his temple near it because it was already there. Yeah.
Above it.
Right.
Above it. Timothy, what's up next for you? What are you doing now?
Well, I'm going to be heading to London next week, actually. I'll be going to London and Edinburgh to look at some old Templar sites with my travel company, Templar Travel Tours. But then later in the year, we'll be doing a another tour in Mexico to go to all the Mexican pyramids, both in the Yucatan and at Teotihuacan and Cholula, where one of the largest pyramids in the world is. We'll be taking a look at that, participating in Mayan ritual. There's certain rituals that were done in ancient Egypt that the Mayans also perform, and that the Templars also perform. And so within the Templar ceremony, there's a secret hand grip that you're given during one of these ceremonies. Well, it just so happens that the Mayans, they have that exact same secret hand grip, and they receive it at the same time in their ceremonies. So there's some sort of a connection there where we all kind of inherited the same thing, probably from the root civilization. So I'm going to be doing a lot of study of that, and just busy with tours. And I'm busy right now producing monoatomic gold and making that available for people who want to buy it. I mean, it was a Templar secret for centuries on how to do it, and I'm a little behind right now, so I'm not taking orders at the moment. But I'm trying to make this available to the world so people can.
Yeah, I'll take some. I'll take some.
Yeah, I'll get you some for sure.
Yeah, I would like to check that out.
Yeah.
Timothy, thank you so much, my friend. Always great to see and talk to you.
Great seeing you, Jimmy. Thank you for having me on. It's been great chatting with you.
Safe travels out there, Timothy. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Take care, brother.
Timothy
Bye.
Hogan, the absolute very best. We've got Timothy's links are below over on our website and throughout social media. Thank you so much, Timothy. Great conversation. I learned so much tonight. I want to remind everybody, tomorrow night here on Fade to Black is our once a month AMAAJA, where you get to ask me anything, and I love just hanging out with all of you. So I'll see you tomorrow night on the show. Thank you, Timothy. But for now, all I've got is go Beckley Tepe. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Special thanks to Bill, John, Dex, Jessica, Dennis, and Kevin. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music by Doug Aldrich. Intro, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2024 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Go Beckley Tepe.